Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri, and our next guests are the stars of one of the best shows on Broadway right now, maybe the best. It's Betrayal. It stars Tom Hiddleston, Charlie Cox, and Zawe Ashton, bringing Harold Pinter's classic drama about a kind of love triangle to the stage in a beautiful, austere, intensely focused production. It breaks a lot of Broadway rules while bringing the text to a brand new light. Please welcome the play's stars, Tom Hiddleston, Zawe Ashton, and Charlie Cox. Let's hear it. Hey, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I loved the show so much. As someone who likes plays and drama, I love Harold Pinter. He's an incredible writer. But I also was so bowled over and thrilled by this production because I don't think I've ever seen such an austere, such a focused, maybe focus is the wrong word. I think every Broadway production or actor would say that they are focused on stage. But something that removed any fat from the play. No sets, right? No fussing about with the actors. Even when you're in a bar in the first scene, there's no sort of playing with the drinks or anything. You're just looking at each other or looking away from each other and focusing on the language. One of the things that's thrilling about that to me, and I'll get to a question, is that as actors, that's actually a really brave, tough thing to do. You're kind of taught in drama school, and playwrights are even taught, give more for the actors to do. Like make them cooking in the background or raise the stakes by adding a little layer of something in between here. So when you're in rehearsal and you're going through a scene like that and the director's saying, stop doing that, don't do that, you're just doing the words. Is that hard? Is that difficult? Or is that exactly what you want?
It's very exposing.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's so not the norm. You are always being told to sort of speed up or add more. And actually what we're doing is pausing a lot and not having any set, as you said. So it is it's all exposing. I think the play is so spare. Harold Pinter as a writer is so spare in his language and in his direct approach to human interaction that actually weirdly the set and the play kind of match each other in a way, and I don't think I could imagine doing it with lots of stuff because, as you say, there's so much tension to hold that actually it's quite rewarding to just have to do it from within. But yes, it was very daunting to turn up on the first day of rehearsals and see 2 beer bottles and 2 chairs and an empty stage.
Right from the beginning, the director basically had that idea that this was going to be a fairly, extremely minimal production, right?
Yes, I think so. Certainly that was the way it was presented. But there's as Zawe said, there's a profundity and a simplicity to Pinter's writing, which we feel we have to meet. And that's, for me, when acting is most exciting. When the play deals with some very deep pain, the experience of human pain, and Pinter's able to make you feel that pain, to feel its sadness, to feel the loss, to feel the grief, to feel the cruelty, but also in moments to find it absurd and funny, that there's humor in it too. And he's so economical with language. It seems naturalistic, it seems everyday, but it's almost poetry. It's
incredibly
poetic.
Detailed.
And so the challenge for us as actors is to match him with the same level of simplicity. So trying to excavate something deep and something profound about the experience of being alive, but to do it in a very clean, economical way. And we've loved it. I mean, it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life.
You're going on, what you said, 200 shows, right?
Just past.
Yay!
Just had 200 shows. Congratulations.
200 years old over here. Definitely feeling it.
When you're staging something like Pinter, where the language is economical, the pauses are directly expressed in the text itself, how does that work for you as an actor? I mean, at that point, you can't change anything, so you have to know what the meaning is behind every economical piece of writing he's put on that page.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think you have to make decisions about what the pauses and silences mean in the same way that you have to make decisions about what you're saying, what you mean when you say the actual words. And that's also very exciting. We had lots of conversations about the differences between pauses and silences.
Is that in the text too? Pause, silence?
Pause and silence, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and he writes them in and, we adhere to them.
We should say the difference between a
Well,
pause
we
and a
don't. I
silence.
mean, look,
It's
we
quite
don't.
cool.
I'm not sure that we have the definitive answer, but
You, what was it?
for me, a silence. The boring answer is the silence is longer, but a more but a more
Pause is
interesting.
this, and the silence is this.
Yeah. But one thing I read in Michael Billington's biography of Harold Pinter was that Harold had told him once that when there's a pause, it's either because you were going to say something and you decided not to, or you thought the other character was going to say something and they didn't. And a silence, the difference between a silence is at the end of a silence, one or both of you are changed forever. So I guess there's a depth to a silence, or there's a underlying revelation or pain to a silence that a pause maybe doesn't quite have.
Something unspoken.
Yeah, you know, like in musicals when they say the song begins when the character can no longer express how they feel in words. I feel like that's Harold Pinter's pauses and silences. It's when the character gets to the point where they can't express anything through words.
So maybe we should burst into song now.
I've always said this, guys, and the dance
Silences,
number,
are you
remember?
singing a song to yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I've wanted to see music, I've wanted to see dance in this piece for a long time. I thought Broadway was going to be the moment, sadly not.
You know, the play was written in the 70s. It's inspired by an affair that Pinter had in the 60s, and our attitudes towards I think women and privilege have changed over the course of time. And simply on the text itself, on the surface, there is a sense of this woman, while she is a three-dimensional character in regards to her relationships to these men, her interior life itself is underexposed within the text, which I think you would kind of expect from a man of that time. Yet there was something about the way that you are staged. You are barefoot the whole play.
Yeah.
You are pregnant through an extended period of the play. You are wearing an apron at times, almost calling attention to the idea of how Pinter or these men view this woman in her societal role. Did you talk about that in the rehearsal period? And
Sorry, I just needed to make notes for a second there, Ricky. That's such a great takeaway. That's a brilliant takeaway. I think...
Thank you.
Applause for Ricky. I feel I agree with everything you've just said. I think the fact that we're not setting this play in the 70s is very interesting, because I feel like it hasn't dated. There's a couple of moments where you might go, cashing traveller's checks. That doesn't feel 100% 2019. But we've made the choice not to set it then. And the weird thing is how well it does translate to the modern day and the modern moment. So speaking on behalf of the female energy or the female role in the piece, I think, weirdly, there are things that have really changed and there are things that really have not changed. I feel like this is a woman who is wanting to experience absolutely every part of herself. She wants to experience every emotion. I mean, she's having this three-way relationship. As you said, she has 2 children. She's experienced childbirth. She's experienced marriage. She's experienced passion. She's experienced an incredible moment career-wise. You know, she's this head of a gallery, and you can tell that she's worked really hard to get there. So you're right. There is this sort of 70s-ish quality of her being slightly more muted, as you say, her internal world not being as vocalized as the 2 men. But I think you'll agree there is this incredible fire inside of her, and I think that is how Pinter views so many of the women in his pieces. He sees them as people who just have this incredible strength and this incredible capacity to move out from painful situations, actually leaving the men a lot of the time in their wake. And so I find her really multidimensional, and I'm so proud to be a Pinter woman. They've got some flack over the years, but
Oh, really?
yeah. But I feel there's just such a richness to Emma's experience in the play.
Was the decision to make you barefoot the entire play, was that in any way, and I may be reaching here, excuse me, was that in any way symbolic or intentional on?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let me clear one thing up. It's not because I'm afraid of being tall. That's what everyone asks. They're like, did you go barefoot because you were afraid of...
It was a request of mine.
It's Charlie
no idea.
forced
Because
me
I
to
just feel
do
so
it.
short in this play.
I had
You
no idea
are
that was a previous conversation in any way.
We're the same height.
I agreed to do it as long as Zawe Ashton has no shoes.
It's being ridiculous. No, I rehearsed like that at the beginning because we were all at the beginning of the rehearsal process finding, as you said about the set being so bare, we were finding the best ways for us to be able to move through it. And it just so happened that bare feet seemed to be the best way for Emma to move. And also it gives a vulnerability, a sensuality to her. It's a nod to the bohemian world of the 70s that Pinter was sort of writing from, and just all of those aspects seem to make it the best physical choice.
Can I
Oh
ask
yeah,
something?
go ahead.
It's a curious thing though. I think Pinter is genuinely interested in is how power is negotiated between men and women,
Yeah.
and who survives, and of course on the surface it seems like my character Robert and Charlie's character Jerry are competing for power, but actually it's Emma who I think survives, and he has a riff in the center, in the middle of the play, about the vulnerability of boy babies versus girl babies, and Robert and Jerry are debating which, boy babies cry more than girl babies, don't they? And why do they? And are in fact, it's a theme through many of Pinter's plays that there is a hidden fragility and vulnerability in men, which is unique to them, and that a woman will prevail and succeed where a man will invariably fail. And I think he's interested in that dynamic in this triangular complexity, which is that Emma has got a strength that Robert and Jerry don't possess. And
Is that a strength and recognition of her vulnerability? She's able to recognize it and sort of able to talk about it and think about it and articulate it in a way that the two men in the play are really not. I mean, your character specifically is the archetypical man who's like, I'm fine, even as he's sort of exploding and raging on the inside.
yes, that's right. Yeah, I think he poured himself into both men. Pinter, I think they're very much reflections of him. At least that's what his widow Antonia Fraser has told me. And there is, I think, a kind of a tension between the external and the internal. And Robert is a successful publisher. He presents himself as charismatic and confident and in control, but he's shattered by the loss of his marriage, shattered by the loss of his friendship with his oldest friend. And I think it is, you see the cost of having to shut all that pain away. I think he becomes kind of cynical and shut down. I don't think he seems all right on the surface, but I don't think he is ultimately. And that's one of the many betrayals, is the betrayal of himself, the betrayal of self, that I think having to keep a lid on his vulnerability only renders him more alone in the end.
One of the things that I love about the play, the production, but also the play itself, is that it's not about an affair for the most part. It's about the end of an affair. Even the sort of penultimate scene is the beginning of the end of this affair between these two people. How do you track that as an actor? I mean, is it just fairly clear? Is it clearly laid out on the page and you understand that easily, or do you have to track that differently since it's told backwards and it's not really about the passion of the affair?
I think it's about the end of affair. The end of an affair. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's also about the end of a friendship as well. And I think it's what I think we've tried to do with this production, and what I've personally enjoyed probably the most about the dynamic that we've found, us three, is that that we feel like the end of the friendship is as painful as the end of the affair. And that these three characters bizarrely kind of love each other equally. Tom, in rehearsals, I can't remember quite how he articulated, but would talk a lot about how the codependency of these relationships, meaning that the marriage really can only survive when the friendship is in place, and equally the affair only can survive when the marriage is in place, etc., etc. To answer your question, sorry, going off.
No, please.
To answer your question, we rehearsed the first week, I think, or week and a half. We rehearsed the play chronologically, meaning in time order.
Does that even make sense?
It wasn't as good a play, I will say that. the going backwards of it all is a massive factor, I think, of how painful.
But it was very revealing. It was, it was revealing to see how you transition in from each moment, and think about how much time has passed between scenes. Because of course the play, when we talk about the play running backwards, it does. But the years go backwards, but the seasons go forwards. Yeah. So the first two scenes are actually in order. So scene 2 is actually the last scene of the play in time. But then you go back to, I know what you're thinking about.
I'm not.
I know you're talking about me and my last line of the play. and then we go back in time, and then you go back in time again, and then you go forward in the seasons, 3 scenes. So it's confusing.
There's sorry, go ahead.
But the dramatic irony, I think, is genuinely a piece of genius from Pinter, because he sets up the plot is revealed within the first 10 minutes. There's very little that's revealed in terms of story. So he lines up the dominoes for the audience very quickly. And then it's about watching. It's not knowing that they're going to fall. The audience knows that as the clock goes backwards. It's the excitement, I think, or the interest is watching how they fall. And the situation is almost, I sometimes remind myself as we're 200 performances in, the situation is almost unthinkable in terms of its painfulness, is that a man and a woman are married, and she has been having an affair with his best friend, who was best man at their wedding.
For 7 years.
For 7 years. And it's
a lot of hard work.
It's a lot.
So much work.
It's a lot. So, and I remind myself, so I play Robert, the man that he most trusted, the man who carries the rings at the wedding, is the man who has betrayed him, and also, it's almost.
And just to add to that, for reasons that as an audience member you have to decide for yourself, on the discovery of the affair. It carries on for 2 more years. Yeah. It is allowed to carry on for 2 more years.
But kind of barely, in a way. It feels like it's alluded to that it wasn't at that point a good affair a good affair. Sorry, like I think you're on. Affair,
but you're onto something.
One of the good
there.
ones.
You're onto something there, because the great thing about Pinter is he doesn't make this a simplistic. Threesome, for want of a better word. He makes it as painful and sometimes as not nicey as a real affair would be. It's not that every time you see the person that you're having an affair with, you sort of fall into their arms and it's this incredible romantic story. He's much more interested in how fraught sometimes those meetings can be, because it is behind closed doors and it is so filled with the feelings of codependency and shame and betrayal.
I think you could assume that your character at a certain point, upon realizing that there is this affair happening, if he in any way understands that the passion of it has kind of died, he doesn't have to communicate to anybody that he knows it or stop you from having it. Imposing shame on you is enough of a kind of punishment and sick reward for him in that moment.
It's a way of managing his pain.
Yeah.
And also what I find so interesting, and the reason there are so many things that have been revealed to me because we've been doing it for such a long time, is that this, I think it's to do with the pauses and silences as well. And the reason people don't speak in some of these scenes is because the next thing they say might save or destroy the relationship. And these relationships really matter. because there are children involved, there are homes involved, and there are careers involved. Robert and Jerry are in the same business. They're both in publishing. Robert's a publisher, Jerry's a literary agent, and they have the same clients, the same very, very successful novelists and writers who they represent, who pay the bills. So if Robert and Jerry have a huge falling out, then it means a lot for their lives. It means a lot for their homes. It means a lot for their, their ability to pay for their families. And I think that their whole lives are intertwined in a very complex way. And so Robert, not revealing that he knows about the affair, is able to somehow swallow it. I think it's difficult, but then he knows he can punish Jerry with it later.
Yeah. I mean, what's worse if you tell your partner that you're having an affair, that they scream, "Oh my God, how could you do this to me? You've destroyed me." Or are you going, "I don't care. Keep
Let's
doing
just
it."
carry on
That's
as
how
we
you,
are.
that's how you, that's the maybe the only way you maintain the power in that situation.
Exactly.
Is wait patiently until the moment where you can go, "Oh yeah, I know, no big deal."
Yeah.
The play's called Betrayal.
But before I move on to questions, I just want to talk about the scene between the two of you at dinner, where one other character shows up for the first time in the play, a waiter, and this
Eddie
play-
Arnold.
Eddie Arnold, yeah.
And,
Hi, Eddie.
and the play suddenly, it's within that scene, it opens up, and like you as actors, and I think even in the scenes following that, end up sort of, I don't know if opening up is the right word, excuse me for being so inarticulate here, but suddenly it becomes a bit of a comedy and kind of a farce in a way, and you are playing in a much different way than you've been playing throughout the whole play up until that point. And it works so well because we've been waiting for this moment for the actors to open up and to start goofing around a little bit. For lack of a better word, again.
That's why Pinter's so great, because I think he knows at that point in the play that there just needs to, the valve just needs to open for a second, because there's been so much intense, painful, tearful stuff that he just knows that the audience is really desperate for some kind of lightness. And I mean, the scene is still very, very painful, but it's
still about power.
It's great for me as a break. I mean, I'm in the back and I'm like, oh, thank goodness, we've just got this moment of incredible laughter and energy that fills the whole theatre, and it really helps us get to the end, I think, in lots of ways.
But it's funny because it's painful.
Yes.
And that's what I think is brilliant about him, is that he recognizes that in great tragedy comes great humor often.
Is there, when you get to a scene like that in rehearsal, is there an awareness that this, based off of the text itself, that this is where you open up and it becomes a bit of a comedy? Or, because a lot of that is not jokes. It's not like they're punchlines that you guys are saying. It's a lot of the way that you are playing that scene and the way that you are playing that scene. So what kind of conversations do you have in the rehearsals to know that the tone that you want to shift the tone so drastically in that moment of the play?
I think again, it comes from his construction, which is that the audience at that point know that Robert knows about the affair. And so the expectations of the audience are they're having lunch and that Robert will confront Jerry. I know you've been having an affair with my wife. And he doesn't. And so he has to sublimate all that anger and all that sense of retaliatory vengeance. And he doesn't say it. And so he takes it out on the waiter, the poor waiter who's just trying to serve them lunch, gets angry with the waiter for being slow, for not bringing the wine in the right way, for not bringing lunch fast enough, gets angry with the food itself, I think, gets angry with the prosciutto and angry with it must be the Maloney's fault, and drinks in order to sort of drown it. Keeps talking about this illusory game of squash that's never going to happen. And then lays into the idea of literature as an idea itself, and gets angry with everything.
Well, and their relationship to literature.
Exactly, but doesn't name the elephant in the room. And so the dramatic irony of the audience knowing that this truth is not being spoken and that it's being redirected into other targets, I think, is what makes it funny.
There's also the wonderful part that in the top of the play, it is said by your character, I think, if I remember correctly, that your character is not very observant and doesn't really recognize the things that are happening around him. And that is a perfect scene that articulates that so perfectly.
In scene 2,
yeah.
when Jerry finds out that Robert has known, he says, but how can you not told me? We've had lunch many times. And then now we get to see them having lunch and Jerry not realizing.
How kind of obvious
Yeah.
it is that there's something bothering him.
Yeah.
Robert's behaving very. He seems really angry.
He's like, you and my wife like the same literature. We have a question on from Twitter. It's what sort of changes did you make in performing Betrayal on Broadway versus in London? How do the audiences differ?
Very few changes, I think. We wanted to. Very few deliberate changes. It's very much the same production. The theatre in New York is a little wider, which is interesting in terms of the spaces between us physically. But I think it's what's been interesting is just the iterative process of doing it, performing it every day. New things in the play are revealed because you know it. You come to know it so well, and you can explore the intricacies and the complexities in it. And as you say, one of the things I found in New York specifically is of course, there are many betrayals. And one of the most fascinating betrayals that I've found is the betrayal of poetry, a high literary form, by prose. That actually Pinter himself is a great lover of poetry and talks about Yeats, loved Yeats. And that Robert and Jerry, when they met at university, were editors of poetry magazines, but now they're very successful by publishing modern prose literature, which actually as men they don't particularly respect. So of course there's the betrayal of husband by wife, or friend by friend, or wife by husband, but actually there's a sort of betrayal, an extra betrayal, which I've only really discovered in New York.
Betrayal of themselves and their own high-minded
High ideals,
yeah.
The betrayal of the younger self by the older self.
Which in a way you could imagine kind of comes from Pinter as well, as a poet who became a playwright. I mean, playwriting is amazing, but I think script writers, more than any other kind of writer, are very self-deprecating about the work that they put out in the world.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. I think we have time for a couple questions from the audience. Who has a question? Right here?
Okay, hi. So my question's kind of already been touched on, but I've seen Betrayal twice. It's captured me in a way like a lot of many productions haven't. So like with the minimalism of the set, like did that pose any sort of challenges in terms of like figuring out like blocking, stuff like that?
What was so nice is, and thank you for saying that, because that there have been a few people who've said that they've come to see the play more than once, and that really means so much to us because it feels genuinely like we might be doing something that feels, fresh and amazing. Different types of people are coming to see it, and age ranges and all the rest. So it means a lot. I think we were really lucky that we, on day one, had an incredible trust between the three of us. And I often say that it's ironic that we are doing a play called Betrayal because the play behind the scenes is called Absolute Trust. And I just don't know how we would have done it without that. For me, that's been the center of where this play has come from. It's been the reason why I was able to get up on a bare wooden stage and go, right, it's going to be okay. You don't need to do the dance number, which I still might add, of course, before December the 9th when we close. But I just got up there and I felt, I feel a core connection to these people. And it's because I can feel how open they are. And I feel the trust that we have. And from that place, I'm now able to fill the space. I'm able to feel the character. I'm able to commune with Harold Pinter. If you're an actor doing Pinter, you cannot, for a minute, think you're going to get the Tipex or what do you call it, the whiteout pen, and go, I'm just going to put my own interpretation on this. You have to lay yourself.
My character would say that here.
My character's a little bit more funny than you have to just strip yourself back completely and commune with him because he gives you a lot of space as a writer to get the play very wrong. And so the fact that we had the luxury of having a great connection instantly between the three of us enabled the vulnerability. I, again, speak on behalf of myself. They're going to turn around and go, I don't like you at all. But it gave the vulnerability that you need to be able to really inhale this play and breathe it out in the specific way that it feels like we're doing with no props.
Oh yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I was just going to say that I think, paradoxically, the lack of furniture feels very claustrophobic. And I think it's because if you're in an uncomfortable conversation, if you're feeling uncomfortable feelings, it's very human to enter avoidance around them by moving insignificantly, by moving from a couch to a coffee table, by picking up a magazine, pouring yourself a drink. There's many things you can do to display or to avoid the really uncomfortable feelings and to appear to be fine about it. We don't have that. So when these moments arise in our play, if the avoidance that we have is so transparent, and that's what I think makes the production so uncomfortable at times for people, is because it's so evident that if me and Tom, Robert and Jerry, if he's asking me why we haven't played squash, and I know why we haven't played squash, we haven't played squash because I'm having an affair with his wife and I can't enter that arena with him. If he says to me, when are we going to play squash? If I could go somewhere and pour myself a drink or pick up a magazine or look at something, I could very easily make it seem like, oh, it's no big deal, it's nothing. But the only thing I can do in that moment is not look at him. And it feels weird. Why aren't you looking at me? Why, you know what I mean? It feels very claustrophobic, those moments. And those are kind of my favorite moments in the play.
Yeah, you're so right.
Luckily for me, I love feeling uncomfortable when I'm in the theater. Guys, I love the play so much. It's currently at the Jacobs Theater on Broadway, and I would be remiss to say, after you go see Betrayal, you should go see Zawe's play, which is at the Soho Rep downtown. She's a playwright herself, and she's got an amazing play downtown that people should go see.
And read her book.
And read her book. Oh my God, look at this.
Hashtag
And I'm sure you guys got great stuff that people can go see too. But
yeah, they've got some stuff going on.
But Betrayal at the Bernard Jacobs Theater, it's an incredible production. And give them a huge round of applause for coming by. Let's hear it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.